Good day, Dean and classmates. I'm May Talento, and my report is about corruption and the status quo, corruption and violence, and moral or ethical leadership under Topic 5, Ethical Leadership. The objectives of my discussion is first to describe the corruption in the status quo and the corruption and violence, and to define the concept of ethical and moral leadership. Corruption. We are all familiar with the term corruption. In fact, when I say corruption, surely there's something that comes to your mind, especially that we are in a public sector. So to define corruption, it is a form of dishonesty or a criminal offense which is undertaken by a person or an organization which is entrusted in a position of authority in order to acquire illicit benefits or abuse power for one's personal gain. Corruption may involve many activities, which include bribery, influence peddling, and the embezzlement, and it may also involve practices which are legal in many countries. Corruption can take many forms and can include behaviors like public servants demanding or taking money or favors in exchange for services, politicians misusing public money or granting public jobs or contracts to their sponsors, friends and families, or corruption's bribing officials to get lucrative deals. Corruption can happen anywhere, such as in business, government, the courts, the media, and in civil society, as well as across all sectors from health and education to infrastructure and sports. Corruption can also involve anyone, such as politicians, government officials, public servants, business people, or member of the public. Proceeding with my first topic, corruption and the status quo. Status quo is a Latin phrase that literally means the state in which or current state of affairs. Status quo often conveys the idea of stability and the way things have always been, and the phrase is commonly used in a socio-political context. One of the concerns under leadership is the existence and perpetuation of the corrupt political and economic system, with no possibility for change. Krug claims that corruption leads to a status quo in a political system. Reason why corruption leads to the status quo. First, corruption generates significant financial and other rewards for office holders. Second, corruption causes financial wealth for the ruling party, promoting their political power and thereby enhancing their hold on the status quo. And third, corruption undermines the rules of law and promotes the interests of those who are in power. The ruling clique can manipulate the law to their advantage. Corruption can cause distorted economic priorities and the diversion of resources from public projects and activities to private banks' accounts. Globalization has helped corrupt officials to transfer money easily from their countries to Western countries, and especially to Swiss banks. Further, corrupt money is protected from public scrutiny because of the privacy regulations. Just to share a report that I found on the corruption index of the Philippines. Based on the Global Corruption Index compiled and published in January 2022 by Global Risk Profile, the Philippines ranked 105 out of 196 countries and territories ranked by the perceived levels of corruption. It slipped from its 102 place last year and is classified as medium risk for corruption. As you can see on the right side, there is a top 10 and a bottom 10. The top 10 is the very low-risk countries to corruptions, namely as Norway, Finland, Sweden, Denmark, Estonia, New Zealand, Netherlands, Iceland, Australia, and Ireland. On the other hand, the bottom 10, classified as very high risk, are Afghanistan, Venezuela, Equatorial Guinea, Libya, Eritrea, South Sudan, Yemen, Democratic Republic of the Congo, North Korea, and Syria. My second topic is corruption and violence. It is difficult to deal with the problem of crime and violence without controlling corruption. Violence thrives when the criminals go unpunished because of the weak enforcement of laws. The criminals can bribe the law enforcement officials in order to evade punishment. As a result, violence and corruption are interrelated, acting in concert with one another. Presidential elections in the Philippines have often involved significant levels of violence. The familiar nature of Philippine politics was one of the several factors that fueled fierce rivalries and persistent violence during each electoral cycle. Many politicians created their own private armies by organizing and arming their supporters in order to protect themselves or engage in violence. Political violence is a recurrent problem in the country, fueled by lax enforcement of laws and entrenched political dynasties, some of whom have their own private armies. If you are familiar with Maguindanao Massacre, I think it's one of the example of corruption and violence, wherein the said massacre happens on November 23, 2009, wherein 58 men and women, including journalists, were slaughtered and dumped into roadside pits during an attack. The leaders of the powerful Ampatuan family who ruled Maguindanao are charged with ordering the killings in a bid to quash an election challenge from a rival clan. My third and last topic is moral and ethical leadership. Moral or morality is often used to refer a person's moral standards for himself or herself. Many of the codes of conduct encourage people to behave in ways that maintain order and peace in society and that protects the rights and safety of others. It is influenced by personal values. Ethical or ethics. Ethics are a system of moral principles and the rules of conduct that arise from them. Ethics are a set of moral principles that determine right or wrong behavior. Ethics refers to an individual's moral beliefs or principles which govern his or her conduct. Both moral and morality and ethics or ethically loosely have to do with distinguishing the difference between good and bad or right and wrong. Many people think of morality as something that's personal and normative, whereas ethics as the standards of good and bad, distinguished by a certain community. Hanbury emphasized that public leaders are encouraged to take the same type of risk as private entrepreneurship and also to take ethical oaths. Safty mentioned that leadership is not limited to the corporate chiefs, army commanders, or politicians, that it has become an increasing concern for the public. Safety emphasized morality as a crucial element of leadership rather than power or authority. Public leadership requires vision and commitment for global justice, equality, and sustainability. Moral leadership focuses on the important values of public administration. Moore identified a three-dimensional tool which labels the public values scorecard. This consists of three discrete elements. First, a public value account which implies a balance sheet, the cost, in terms of finances, negative outcomes, and the inherently harmful use of state authority, and the gains, desired social outcomes, justice, fairness. It's a question of what dimensions of a public value do we produce and how can we produce more net value in the future. Second, it's an identification of the organization and its goal, mission, formal authority, interest groups, media, and the like. A legitimacy and support perspective, a question of what sources of legitimacy and support do we rely on and how can we increase legitimacy and support in the future. Third is an assessment of the capacity of the organization or flow of resources, human resources, and so on. It's operational capacity perspective with the question of how well and how reliably do our programs, policies, and procedures work to create value and how can they be made more efficient and effective on the future. There are six main elements of ethical leadership. First, honesty. Honesty makes ethical leaders worthy of the trust others place in them. It means leaders commit to presenting facts as they are, playing fair with competitors, and communicating honestly with others. Second, justice. Justice, to be fair, means to treat everyone equally, offer opportunities with no favoritism, and condemn improper behaviors and manipulations, as well as any other actions that could harm someone. Third is respect. Ethical leaders respect others around them, regardless of their position or identifying characteristics. This means they listen to each stakeholder, foster inclusion, and value diversity. Fourth is integrity. Integrity is shown when values, words, and actions are aligned and consistent. It is not enough to talk the talk. One has to walk the walk to demonstrate integrity. Fifth is responsibility. Responsibility means accepting to be in charge, embracing the power and duties that come with it, and always responding and being present in challenging situations. Last is the transparency. Transparency concerns mainly the communication with all stakeholders. It means keeping an open dialogue, accepting feedback, and disclosing the information others need to deliver their work. That ends my report. Thank you po.